story time, and today we're going to finish up the second half of Revolutionary War on Wednesday, which is part of the Magic Treehouse series. Are you guys ready? Alright, let's dive in. Chapter 6, Crossing the Delaware. The huge boat rocked in the water. Giant chunks of ice smashed against its sides. "Thanks a lot, Annie," Jack whispered. He shivered in the snowy cold. "We're not supposed to go on their secret mission with them." "It's okay," she whispered. "Maybe we can help George Washington." "Are you nuts?" Jack whispered. "We should be on our way home now." The boat hit a piece of ice. It bounced, then dipped into the river. Jack clung to the wooden side. He hoped they wouldn't turn over. Nobody could survive this icy water, he thought. It would be like sinking in the Titanic. The crew fought hard to keep the boat moving forward. They rowed past chunks of ice into a smoother part of the river. Light from oil lamps shone on the water, making the ice chunks behind them glow like huge glittering jewels. Jack looked back. Other boats were following them. They were filled with soldiers, horses, and cannons. "Where exactly are we going?" Annie whispered. Jack shrugged. He reached into his bag and pulled out their Revolutionary War book. By the dim lantern light on the boat, he searched through the book. He found a painting of General Washington crossing the Delaware River. He showed the painting to Annie. They each read the caption silently. After George Washington crossed the Delaware, he led his men on a 9-mile march to a British post. The post was filled with Hessians, German soldiers hired by the British to fight for them. The American patriots caught them off guard. The Hessians never thought the patriots would attack on a stormy Christmas night. It was a great victory for the patriots. They captured almost 1,000 Hessians. Hardly any of Washington's men were lost. "Yay! We won't have to send the captain's letter!" Annie exclaimed. "Shh!" said Jack. But George Washington turned around and looked back at Jack and Annie. "Oh no," Jack thought. "We're caught again." He closed his eyes as if that would make him invisible. "He's coming," said Annie. Jack looked up. George Washington was making his way back towards them. In the next moment, the commander-in-chief loomed above them like a giant shadow. "Children?" he asked in a quiet, angry voice. "Sorry," Jack squeaked. "Merry Christmas," said Annie, but George Washington did not say Merry Christmas back. Chapter 7, Spies. "What are you doing here?" George Washington asked. The commander-in-chief was furious. "We made a mistake," Jack said. We didn't mean to come." George Washington turned towards the rowers. "Who let these children sneak aboard?" he asked in a stern voice. The men looked at Jack and Annie with surprise. "It's not their fault," Annie said quickly. "They were just working too hard to notice us." Just then, the boat banged against the ice. The ice cracked. The boat moved on, then bumped against the shore. 2 soldiers jumped out and pulled the boat up to shore. George Washington looked at Jack and Annie. "This boat is returning to get more men," he said. "When it does, you two will get out and stay out on the other shore." "Yes, sir," said Jack. He felt very embarrassed. George Washington gave orders to the rowers. "Make sure these children do not board any other boats when you return," he said. The general stepped out onto the riverbank. The wind started to pick up. The snow fell harder. As the crew unloaded the boat, neither Jack nor Annie spoke. Jack was miserable. They just caused trouble for George Washington, just when the general was trying to make America an independent nation. Jack desperately wished he and Annie had gotten home earlier. They watched more and more as the boats landed on the riverbank. As the soldiers unloaded their weapons and horses, a freezing rain began. Now rain, snow, and sleet all fell together. Jack heard George Washington's call to one of his men. "The storm is getting worse, Major," the general said. "Yes, sir," said the major. "I think we're in for a blizzard," said Washington. "Yes, sir. Our mission may be hopeless, sir," said the major. "Should we call it off?" "No, you shouldn't," Jack whispered. "You're going to win." "Should we turn back, sir?" the major said. "No, no," said Annie. She stood up. The boat rocked. "Don't turn back, George Washington, sir," she shouted. "You have to march on, sir. You have to attack the Hessians, sir." "Shh!" Jack tried to pull Annie back down. "We're not supposed to know about their secret mission, Annie." "How does she know our plans, Major?" George Washington asked. "Listen to us, sir," Annie said. "You're going to win." She pulled away from Jack and jumped out of the boat. "Annie!" Jack leaped onto the riverbank. He scrambled after Annie up the steep, icy slope. "You have to lead your men, George Washington, sir," Annie said. "The Hessians will be surprised. They think no army will be marching on a night like this." How do you know all of this? The major shouted above the storm. How do you know what the Hessians are doing and thinking? For once, Annie was at a loss for words. She just guessed, said Jack. Just then, a bearded soldier who had yelled at Jack earlier stepped forward. I saw this boy earlier, he said. He was writing things down. No, I was just... Now Jack was at a loss for words. Seize them, the major shouted. They're spies. Chapter 8. These are the times. Jack grabbed Annie's hand. We're not spies, he said. He whirled around to face George Washington. General Washington, remember those words you said to your men? Jack said. You should believe them yourself, sir. What are you talking about? He asked. Jack yanked the captain's letter from his back. By the light of the lamp, he read the words the captain had copied for his children. These are times that try men's souls, Jack read. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Jack looked at George Washington. Even if things look impossible, you should keep going, sir, he said. The harder things seem, the greater the triumph, right? That's what you read to your men. You have to keep going for their sake. Yes, and you have to keep going for our sake, said Annie. For the sake of the future children of America, sir. As the wet snow hissed about them, George Washington stared a long moment at Jack and Annie. Finally, he put a hand on each of their shoulders. I do not know who you are, he said, but I do not know how you know what you know. But I believe you. For your sake, and for the future children of America, we will march on. Yay! Cried Annie.
Me too.
Thank God, Jack said softly. He sighed with relief and put away the captain's letter. Now, get back in the boat, George Washington said. You must leave the fighting to me and my men. Jack felt very grateful to George Washington and his whole army. They were risking their lives for all of America's children, past and future. He could barely speak. Thank you, sir, said Annie. Thank you both for telling me to listen to my own advice, said George Washington. He called to the rowers waiting in the boat. Take good care of these two. George Washington climbed onto his horse. He looked down at Jack and Annie. Merry Christmas, he said. And then the commander-in-chief rode away into the stormy darkness. Chapter 9. Flash. All aboard, one of the rowers called. Jack and Annie hurried down the steep riverbank. They climbed back into the boat. The crew pushed away from the shore. The boat started back through the icy, churning waters of the Delaware River. Jack was freezing in the sleet and snow, but he didn't worry about that now. He was thinking instead about how they helped George Washington. He was thinking about how they had helped keep history on its course. Jack felt great. When they got to the riverbank, Jack and Annie jumped out of the boat. Thanks, yelled Jack to the rowers. With the wind at their backs, Jack and Annie took off through the blizzard. They ran down the icy bank of the Delaware River. Thunder rumbled in the snowy sky. Lightning zigzagged over the woods. How will we find the treehouse? Cried Annie. I don't know, said Jack, but don't worry, we'll find it. He felt very confident now after meeting George Washington, after being thanked by George Washington. He and Annie ran on through the rain and the snow and the sleet. They ran along the riverbank until a bright flash of lightning hit the sky. Then Jack saw it. The treehouse was directly to their left, high on the tall tree covered with snow. Over there, he shouted. Jack and Annie ran through the edge of the woods. In the dark, Jack looked up, searching for the treehouse. Lightning hit the woods again. Jack saw the rope ladder flapping wildly in the wind. He grabbed it. Annie, he called. Here, she said. Come on, let's climb up, he said. They climbed up the swaying ladder and scrambled into the treehouse. They were soaking wet and covered with slush and snow. Annie grabbed the Pennsylvania book. I wish we could go there, she shouted. The wind blew even harder. The treehouse began to spin, and it's going faster and faster. Then everything was still, absolutely still. Chapter 10. This Peaceful Place. Gray early light spilled into the treehouse. Birds sounded in the woods. The summer wind felt warm and gentle. Jack and Annie were wearing their nice dry clothes again. Oh man, said Jack, it's so good to be home. Yeah, said Annie, sighing, back in this peaceful place. Jack pulled up the captain's letter out of his pack. He turned it over. It was addressed to Molly and Ben Sanders, Apple Tree Farm, Frog Creek, Pennsylvania. Molly and Ben lived on a farm near these woods over 200 years ago, said Jack. Annie gently touched the letter. Your dad's going to make it home, kids. He misses you, Annie whispered, as if she could send comforting words back through time. Jack carefully placed the special writing from the Revolutionary War next to the writing from the Civil War. "Look," said Annie. She picked up a note lying on the corner. It simply said, "Come back on Tuesday." "Another message from Morgan," said Annie. Jack smiled. He pulled out his pack. "See you on Tuesday, Treehouse," he said. He started down the rope ladder. Annie followed. In the early daylight, they ran through the Frog Creek woods. Then they ran down their street. They climbed onto their porch and rested against their railing. They looked out at the dawn sky. Jack remembered the whoosh of the cold wind on the Delaware. He remembered the hiss of the wet snow and the slosh of icy waves. He remembered George Washington reading to his men. "The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph," Jack whispered. "Those words are true," said Annie. "It was a hard conflict, and I feel kind of glorious right now, don't you?" Jack laughed. "Yeah, definitely," he said. Then he and Annie slipped into their quiet, peaceful home. All right, well, that's the end of this book. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys learned something. I thought it was really cool and interesting. I love the Magic Treehouse books, so if you have a favorite one of the series, please let me know in the comments. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, all those things, and we'll see you guys later. Bye!